Hello everybody, welcome back to the world famous Center for Off-Road Research, Shenanigans, and Science. And today my Panda Tetra 24 has arrived. Hope you liked our unboxing video, but here it is. And this thing is heavy. I mean, it's heavy. I don't know how heavy, but we're gonna find out. And boy, let's see. $462 grams with the battery in it. Let me find my heaviest crawler and compare that. This is my heaviest crawler. It's a 4-wheel steer rig. It's got a servo on the back. It's got shocks. I do have that carbon fiber, I don't know, carbon fiber chassis. I've got a Surpass 1400. I got a metal skid plate. I've got fully brassed front end here, metal servo links. I've even got brass rings in the tires here, and I will now include my heaviest battery. This thing is about 10 grams heavier than stock, so I'm just going to throw it all on top of here and we'll see what it comes out to be. Well, you can just flip the numbers. Instead of 462, it is 426 grams. Let's look a little bit deeper. Well, let's find out just how much these bodies weigh. I mean, this is going to be a little heavier because of the tire and metal in it, but there's no way I'm keeping the body anyway. It's all right, but it feels pretty heavy. So it's 82. That's about 30 to 40 grams heavier than an SCX24 body. And just for fun, on my heaviest rig, let's see how much my custom body weighs. I don't even know. 28.9. $82.5. It's got some nice details I like. I like the control arms. They're very similar to SCX24 ones, and almost wouldn't be surprised. Well, they're a little different. It does not have super articulation. In fact, I can't even compress the shock all the way. The weight of this vehicle will never allow that to fully compress the shock, and I know why. I've already figured that out. But it's not giving you full compression on the shocks, and I'm bending the control arms to make it happen. I'm going to show you what I've discovered next. Alright, remember how I said a piece of paper is one of the best diagnosing tools that you could put on an RC car? Well, this one, at full extension, here's the first thing I'm noticing. At full extension, and everything in this video is opinion and observation of my own, and I'm compressing this front shock a little bit, and guess what? That control arm goes right into the motor. That's why I can't get full arc out of that link right there. I just literally tore it because the motor's in the way of its own control arm. Goodness. Alright, let's move on to the next thing. Every one of my SCX24s that I have ever bought. I'm not saying that yours isn't this way, but every one of the SCX24s that I've ever bought, the end yoke of the front drive shafts always hit the links, and I'm happy to say that these do not do that. They have proper clearance for the end yoke and the links, so that's encouraging. I may 3-link this thing and just get rid of this link here that goes right by the motor, and it's not a passenger vehicle, you won't die. So I know that for a fact that will give it proper articulation on the left front, but man, that hits hard, bends that link. That's kind of crazy. The back actually is good. I'm happy about the back on this. It does bottom out on its own battery tray before it gets to full compression of the shock. It's really close, but it's actually bottoming out. This right here, I'll get a pointer in there, but this rear suspension piece actually hits the battery tray, so it's never gonna flex farther than that. I don't know that matters though, because there's not enough articulation or weight in this vehicle to even make that happen. The springs are too tight. So I think the first upgrade I'm going to do on this, aside from yanking out this link, is new springs. These are horrendously tight, and I think that'll alone will wake this thing up. I don't know how much upgrading this thing can actually do. For something so heavy, brassing out the diff cover isn't really going to make that much difference. It's a small percentage of the weight of the vehicle. The other option is to put a smaller motor in it, and this motor, it's bigger than a Barrage. It's like a Barrage's bigger brother. I'll get a Barrage and just show that to you. Alright, I've put it on there, and you can see the difference, and that's about where it'll mount up. So I feel like a Barrage motor right here would be a lot better choice. Even a PN70 is a lot smaller motor than this one, and or PN90. I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna probably pull this motor out and see if I can't bolt a PN90 in right away. I think the gear modulus is different though, so I'll have to think about that before I do it. I haven't even driven this thing yet. Well, here's another thing I do like about this, is the fact that it uses a 1.5 millimeter hex in all the screws that I've seen so far. I'm just kind of fitting them, but that's good news. The 1.3s are pretty small on the SCX24s, and looks like this bumper can be tucked back. And you know, I've decided I am going to drive this in stock form, and I'm going to see what it can do on my course. I have the Li-ion battery charging on my hobby charger. I suspected that's what it was in the video that I'd seen earlier, and sure enough, it turned out to be a lithium ion, so I should weigh that too. I'm going to run this with the stock battery first, and then I'll run it with a SCX24 battery, because they're, I'm sure, half the weight. And let's see, what else can we look at? metal links here for some reason. I don't know. It's bolted to plastic. They'll probably come out with brass portal covers and brass C-hubs. The brass C-hub on this is massive. This whole thing unbolts, looks like. And that'll give it a lot of nice weight. And I'm sure they've used the same front and back, and you'll be able to unbolt the ends off for the forward and rear axle. It'll also allow you to do a four-wheel steer if you wish to do that. And a lot of the reason this is going to be heavier is, first of all, that's a beefy frame. That's got a lot of weight. It's a deep sea channel, and I'm sure it's strong. You could probably throw it off a cliff and it'd be fine. Rock sliders. I'm surprised that it carries the ESC so high, but in a way I'm not, because the motor is just massive. And they had another thing it has is a complete centerline drive shaft, and that's probably the reason why it doesn't hit the left side lower link here. I like that centerline drive shaft, but because of that, it puts the motor up pretty high, and everything's a give or take. So I should pull this mount off and just find out how much weight that is up top. Also, guys, don't ever have this thing charged or energized with the battery and allow that to happen. You'll short out your ESC and the whole thing will be dead. There's no protection for that. They're just open magnets. The only protection for it, I should say, is this here, but with the body off, it's not going to do any good. And these tabs will help align it for when it gets hit on rocks. Somebody went through a lot of trouble to wire that and put all this stuff in. The wiring looks well done. I'm going to use my high clearance link method where I bend and stretch them for this link here. I do want that 4 link, but what I'm going to do is the opposite of a high link. I'm going to low link it so this bar goes more straight forward and then up at the end. And it would have been nothing for them to put in a molded plastic bent piece. Really, literally nothing. They just could have molded it different and it would have missed the motor. It does have plastic steering links in the front, and I see no problem with that. They've done it right. Instead of a ball joint here, it's a hinge, and that's how they should be. They're not meant to swivel, and they did that right. These are ball joints, and that's okay, but these here should be hinges, and they are, so that's good. Also, this diff cover is exactly the same from what I hear as the SCX24s. That's a good thing. I've got a 13-gram one with the skid plate I could put on it. You know, I like the quarter test. Let's find out how many quarters I can put under the diff of this and a similar sized tire. Let's see, they're fairly close. Not, well, it's kind of in between. I'm gonna say it's in between a Patagonia and a Scrambler. But let's just find out about the diff clearance. I can already tell you from looking that it's significant. That's a big change. Let's find out what that actually is. The SCX24 can do 11 quarters underneath the diff cover. I just couldn't get that 12th one in there. I tried, and that is on Scramblers. That's a big tire, and that's raising it as high up as I can get it with the SCX24 axles. So 11 plus one that doesn't fit, so 11. So that's 11 under the Tetra 24s, and we're just getting started. I'll pull that out and see what, well, just figure out how many we can add. I'll do that off camera. And using the same methodology as before, I have placed them under until I couldn't fit the last one in, and that is 14 quarters before the last one doesn't go in. Number 15 is hanging there, and here on the ground next to them you can actually see the difference between the two, and that's 3/4 worth, but you got to remember 3/4 worth at scale. I'm going to figure out what that actually is if this was a real vehicle. So I did a little math, because this is the Center for Off-Road Research, Shenanigans, and Science, and I have determined that if these were full-size vehicles, the difference is about 5.2 inches, and that is a lot. If you're a full-scale off-roader, if you can raise your diff by 5.2 inches, you're going to get a lot more good out of it, a lot more clearance. So that's a fantastic jump. And this isn't an all bad thing yet. I haven't tried the electronics that other people have been posting about. I don't know how good the servo is. I don't care. I've got lots of Emaxes, and I don't know how long this one's going to be with me anyway. I do like the tires so far. They're a bit stiff, but they seem like they've got good tread, good compound. And once I get the battery charged, it's on the charger right now, we'll do some runs with it. This is an SCX24 shock, and notice how it has a ball joint here. I'll even zoom in on that so you can see it. It's a pivot ball with a ball joint, and these are good because when the truck leans, or you get a lot of articulation as the truck leans, the shock has some motion where it can go without side loading the piston. Okay, I will show you. And all this, everything I'm posting is either opinion or observation of what is. There's no opinion happening here. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. Okay, this is the top shock here, and if I take this off, there's a spacer that has a sleeve. It is not a ball, it's a sleeve. And without it, this is what actually the shock has to work with. It's a solid sleeve, and we have a cylindrical hole here. What I will probably do with mine is find a ball that can fit in this area, and then I'll make my own retainer on both sides to hold it in place so that it can pivot. The bottom side has a ball joint. I'm kind of surprised that they did not include one in the top. The bottom is just like an SCX24 without having its own screw come out. It appears to be a ball joint anyway. Yeah. So it can pivot at the bottom, it just cannot pivot at the top the way it can here. So I'll put that back together. And the shock itself, the action is very smooth. I'm happy with that. The spring's a bit stiff, like we know, and it looks like it has, yeah, we can even preload that with that preload tensioner right here. You can spin this and load or unload the spring. I usually have mine all the way dialed up for the least amount of preload, because then you get the most amount of well, the softest spring out of it. So it's still a very stiff spring though, and I'm hoping the springs I have will fit over that shock cylinder. I'll pull them off in a little while after I do the first test run with it, and find out how they do. And you know how I always show you the tire bounce test. If you can move one side and bounce the other side, then it's probably fine. This one on the front axle, both sides are too tight. So I'm gonna loosen those before I even drive it. They're not gonna last if I don't. Let's see what millimeter wrench that is. Looks like a 5 maybe. Alright. See how the wheel bounces after I move it? That's fine. And that's fine too. It does have a bit of play in this between the two sides. But as long as it bounces, that's an okay tension. When I go to bend these links to full extension, one thing I'm noticing is if I look at the plastic end pieces there, see how they move right here? This one especially right now, it's moving just a tiny bit. End of that link. After a certain point right there, it doesn't move anymore. And to get full compression, it's actually bending the link. So this plastic piece here is on my truck, I will qualify that, on my truck is it stops moving before the suspension does, and then the link has to bend to get the rest. And a way to really be able to tell that would be to pull that. I'll pull the top shock off. Alright, you can see that the spring is no longer connected to the truck. I'll flip it over and it should articulate all the way, but yet it doesn't. I think it's catching on its own upper link. Oh, let's see. Yeah. The links don't appear to be touching each other, but maybe they are a little bit right here. I'll get my piece of paper out and do a little sciencey stuff. Hopefully they are. Hope that is all it is, because then I can notch the link. Unfortunately, that's not it. They passed. They managed to clearance it very well. So that part's good. I'm just a little surprised. Oh, I'm hitting the motor there. That's the side that hits the motor. No, it's not. The only thing it could be is this joint doesn't pivot far enough. And I can see it bending at the end there. I have put the battery back in for the articulation test, and we just want to figure out how much it actually has. And I figured out at this point that this is how many I can put under it, and one more will lift the front tire, and this is how much it has on the back. I assume it's the same as the front. We'll check that and I'll count these out. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 17. That's not what I was hoping for, but we can make it do better. I promise you we can. We can do a lot better than that with it. And figure out how many millimeters that is for you here. And I just measured the stack, and it is roughly 29 millimeters of rear wheel articulation. We'll try the front and see if it's about the same. We'll see if 18 picks up the back tire. still good. 19 or 18. Here comes number 19. And 19. Let's see if I can see any light under that tire. It's barely touching, just barely. So I got 17 on the rear, 19 on the front so far, and 20 has the back tire off the ground. Yep. Well, no, it's just, it is touching, isn't it? Well, is it? Yeah, it's touching. If I shake the table, that tire moves. 20. Oh, but I've lifted the front. Hold on. Party foul. The left front's up off the ground. It's gonna have to take a bit away from that to get it back down. Shaking the table, they're touching. I would like to have seen a little more articulation in the back, because that would have allowed the front to have stayed down. If the back can pivot, that's a very good thing. Well, maybe it can do all that. It can't do that one. And that right there is what I have come up with to make sure that all four wheels are still on the ground. So you can tell my work area is pretty cluttered here, but I've had a lot of projects lately. So I'll figure out how many that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. There's 12. There's 18, 19, 20. So we get 17 quarters in the back, 20 in the front. Here is another thing I do really like about this. They've been very generous with the axles. They stick out far enough that even if you had an issue where you ran out of space, that you're still going to get enough of that sticking out of the end in order to be able to get a lug nut on it. And also happy to say that the wheel weights that we are all familiar with should theoretically go right on. Let's see if they do. And of course the pin fell out. So I'll put that in and see if it goes on. I have noticed something already, that when I go to put this on, it does fit over the axle just fine. And as I go to seat it down, it does not really want to engage on the pin very well. The pin actually fell out the first time I did this. And the reason why is, let me get some light on that a little more. The side of this weight actually hits the portal itself, and it doesn't have the conical shape of the SCX 24s. So you can use these weights, but you're going to have to take off this cup. You're going to have to shave it back, just basically cut it, you know, machine this thinner, because this can only go on flat. And this part here that hangs inward when it's put on, we're going to have to basically flatten that out. Otherwise, you're going to get right into it here. That's where it's going to hit. See that? and these aren't going to fit the way they currently are. It's no problem, just extend this out. Another cool thing, they do have the same size hexes, and here's the home run of these wheels. They have integrated the beadlock portion into the front of the rim, and what that does is it allows this entire rear area to be flat and open. You could put a massive weight inside of this thing. It could be huge. But here's the great thing, like the SSDs and what was the other one I bought? I just got some Majoras that have the screws on the back side, and they actually hit the weight and don't let it sink in flush, fully seated. This can go in flat, it's fully seated. Look how much wider you could go. If you're a manufacturer of weights and you want to do something for this truck, I'll get the inner diameter of this wheel for you, and keep in mind you'll have to run it out flat, no cupping like this on the edges. But I'll get the inner diameter of that for you guys if you want to make a big old brass weight for it, because that's what it's going to take for this truck in order to weigh that part down. So the inner diameter of that wheel dish is just a shade over 27 millimeters. So if you did it at 26.5, it would easily fit in there. And you could even make it thicker than this, so long as the back is flat, and here's why. I'll show you. So if you're a machinist and you want to make the first one of these, you can. You see how much thread sticks out of that? Compare that to the size of the nut. It's a lot. I'll look at the back one and show you. You could literally make that probably a good 3 or 4 millimeters thicker, and it would actually space the wheels out just a little bit, but it might be worth it for the weight. We're just going to ask a lot of the motor, because if we do this, it's going to be a really heavy truck. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but those are 5 millimeter lug nuts. The HBX Devastator and Enduro 24 also use those 5 millimeter lug nuts. I don't know if the thread pitch is the same. I assume it is, but I don't really know for sure. And here's something for you 3D printer guys. I was looking at installing these axles on an SCX24. The axles are fantastic. However, this part here is a double connection. You've got the control link, and then you've got the bottom of the shock mount all on the same bolt. So if we can make an adapter that would just slide on here into that place, the shape of the axle, and then so that it doesn't pivot, and then have a shock mount point for the SCX24 shock that looks like that. I may find out, well, that ball looks a lot smaller than that ball, so maybe they're not. Maybe they're close. I haven't, that's a bigger one. So we're going to need to have a block made that will take the place of this shock right here. So 3D printer guys, go after that, make something for it, and that way we can adapt this axle into the SCX24. I haven't pulled off the end yoke yet to see if an SCX24 drive shaft will fit it, but I'm pretty sure that we could pull this carrier off of the top, and I'll bet that an SCX24 one would fit right on that. So basically we just need a lower shock mount to be fabricated, designed, printed, however you call it. I've powered it on for the first time, and there's something, if you want your servos to last, figure out where the end point is. It basically stops moving the wheel, and then back your dual rate off to match it, because there's no point in forcing the servo to push against something where it can't move it anymore. And I'm seeing that it's about 4.5 to be 4.6 on the dial here for that steering dual rate. Don't ask more of your servo than you have to. Another interesting thing is I just found out that you have to have the throttle in reverse for it to go forward like you expect. And I'm already hearing something that doesn't sound happy. Hear that? Could just be dry gears, but a little buzzy. Ooh. I'm actually feeling vibration in this rear axle. See how the front drive shaft does not move forward or back? The back one's jumping like it's missing a bushing of some sort. It's not happy. Well, no matter. It's time to drive it. And I thought the lights were supposed to turn on when I put that on there. Maybe they don't. Oh, there they are. Channel 3. That's cool. That's a cool feature. I like the fact that I can turn the lights on and off. Well, what have I done now? Maybe that's a feature of it. Depending on how many times you turn it on, you get different light settings. The brake lights only turn on when you go in reverse. I think there's an adjustment where I can change how that is. This is literally the first time it's moving. Buzzy motor, unhappy gears. Well, I had planned on driving this, but with all the reports about ESCs online, I'm kind of hesitant to do that. And I know some people have actually sent them back. I don't want to do that. I think this is a cool truck. And what I'm going to do is pull one drive shaft off at a time and spin the wheels and see if there's any resistance that I need to deal with in either of the axles. And if they're both off and I pull the trigger and I still have a buzzy sounding motor. I'll dig into the transmission and check the gear mesh and all that. I just don't want to blow an ESC out for something that could be corrected. Here's another fun fact for you. I have a SCX24 1.0 wheel on the left, and I think this must be a 1.2 wheel on the right that comes on the T24, which I'm just going to call it that from now on instead of the Tetra 24. T24 is easier, but it needs to be that big, and if it's not that big, it will not fit on the axle properly. You could put it on there, but watch what happens. If you put it on and you start cranking that rim down, it's gonna go sideways on you. And the reason it does that is, let me zoom in here. The top of the portal there actually hits the rim, and it's not physically wide enough for the portal to go into the dish of the rim there, the wheel, so it can't properly seat. It's stuck there. So you are stuck with whatever tires fit on this. And like I said, I believe it's a 1.2, but I'll find out for sure. Somebody in the comments will know for sure. But always read the comments in the videos. They usually have something good in it that either I've missed or just extra details, and I'll include whatever I can. Well, I bought this truck for me, and I'm not afraid to void a warranty apparently, so I would rather void a warranty than burn a motor up or ESC up for something silly like the gear mesh too tight, which it is. Also, I'm noticing here that I thought there would be bearings in this, but it has bushings in the transmission housing. So my guess is the whole thing has bushings throughout it. I don't know that yet for fact, but if that is the case, I would like to get a set of bearings to replace all of those, because in my opinion, bearings are better than bushings. Also, this does have a worm gear drive, but it's pretty tight. I'm surprised that the gears in the axles are this tight. I feel like they should move a lot more freely. They're much tighter than the axles on a SCX 24 or an Enduro 24. I know we're pushing a lot more gears. We've got a portal on each side, but I would consider that bound up if that was an SCX 24. Is that they don't want to turn very easily. Also, another side note, I have found the first non-hex screw in the whole truck, and they're for the axles. These end yokes are big. They're very big. I guess this rubber band that goes around here keeps the pin in for the ball joint, the ball yoke in there. And I haven't tried it yet. Let me see if a SCX 24 axle can fit on that transmission side. Well, I can tell you right now for a fact the SCX 24 end yoke will not go on that. It's different shape. It's kind of a half moon on the SCX 24, and it's kind of a rounded dowel rod coming out with two flat sides on it. So unless you're willing to swap out the end yoke, I'm not even sure if that's possible. I mean, it is if you have a it just depends on how much you want to work on it. really. But that's the two side by side. It has to be a lot bigger than the SCX24s, and it also has two flat sides. So next thing I'm going to work on is figuring out why the axle gears are so tight, and also why the motor gears are so tight, and how I can adjust those, because for how I like gear meshes to be, this is very tight. There's no play. There needs to be a little more play, and I just think that's too tight. So I'll count the teeth someday. I'll take a picture of that and get the ratio for you. Just for kicks, I wanted to see if an SCX24 gear would fit on there, and it appears to. It is on the same. The axle shaft is the same size. The hole that it has to go through is the same size, and also I have a little bit of play there. So I think it's a little bit higher gear, but they're the same modulus. I'm going to count the teeth and can you see it cogging? Yeah. I have an extra SCX24 ESC that I think I'm going to throw in there and see if it's not a ESC issue altogether. You can tell in the video that I've hooked a axial AE6 ESC up to it, and I now have decent throttle control, and what I suspected is true actually is. Look at that pinion gear. That is not even round. That's a real problem for me. I don't know if it is for you, but do you see how that could be an issue? I'm going to let you decide what you're looking at. And just FYI, I have not taken the motor off at all. I did take off that spur gear, but once you take the cover off, it comes right out. So yeah, what you see has been not touched at all. It is completely undisturbed, and it appears that the axle shaft, or the output shaft coming out of the motor, I'm going to line that up with a little thing here. The axle shaft is straight. Okay. Now I will show you the same thing with the SCX24 ESC. No cogging. Everything's running smooth. All right. I've been texting back and forth with Panda Hobbies, and I got to give them a lot of credit because they do care. They do want to help with this stuff, and they offered a recommendation that I loosen my portal cases. And what I'm going to do is just make sure that none of these are over tightened. My rear axle seems fine. The front one seems tight, and I want to make sure that these are not snug. I don't want them snug, but I want to make sure they're seated. And I have found where you're going to need a 1.3 millimeter hex, and these are the only ones I've found so far that are 1.3, the ones on the portal. So just thought I'd add that. And it's getting late and I need to go to bed, and I'm nowhere near finished going through this thing yet. It's still got some places where it's binding, and I don't know why. I'll probably end up taking the front portal apart and finding out if this doesn't work. Let me throw a screwdriver in there, and we'll see if that's not the, if that didn't fix it. I hope it did, because that would be so easy. But unfortunately, there's not a way that I can tell you anything about tension, and it's still dragging. I've just got a screwdriver in there, but something is too tight somewhere. I don't know what, but I'm not sure. I have a lot of bearings from racing, and if there's bushings inside that axle, I'm going to try to swap them out for proper bearings. So this is the state of my truck already. I have not even driven it yet. I'm just trying to fix the things that'll burn up the motor, burn up the ESC. I am going to drive the ESC just to see how long it survives, and beyond that, I'll put the SCX24 one in. That's all for tonight, guys. Talk to you later.